when you think about children, and when you think about children being locked in rooms in the dark until they learn to do what they're told, no matter what they're told to do, you have to understand we have to change some things in the world. And to be clear, I am a homeless old man artist from Reston, Virginia, primarily, who prays constantly and who has no crew, no authority. I don't run anything or anyone, and my only income is Social Security, disability, and food stamps unless I beg for money. And I spend all of my money on clothing, food, cannabis, and I got my knuckles tattooed, and cloud space, and on my phone bill. When I telephoned police in perhaps April or May of this year to Valley Place Transitional Housing where I live, at the advice of Valley Place Assistant Director Donnell King, who was present when I telephoned while doing my laundry. Next thing you know, Donnell is in the office with the lights out. Next, the police call me and say they're outside, and will I please come outside and let them in? I go out front on Valley Place, right up at the corner of Valley Place and High Street. So I say, hey officers, the entrance is up here. They walk up and follow me in. Then they say, where is he? I show them the television community room at Valley Place Transitional Housing where the man is who had assaulted me on the street about a week prior. The police tell me to stay back, and so I do. I go over near the front door where the two security officers are from Valley Place. The tall one says, and she's very beautiful, says, you weren't supposed to let them in. And then another one comes in, the other one videotaping, saying, he let them in, he's not supposed to let them in. And the guard is actually recording, saying the police are not allowed in, and it's my fault. Blaming the other guard, actually, in a way, because she let me let them in. I don't know, I'm kind of always confused around these places when I try to figure out the exact details of the strangeness. But let me get back to reading. As the officers bring dude to the entrance area and he's trying to eyeball me down, then the police and the man and the security officer, the two security officers are there. Then they tell me to go back to what I'm doing, the police. The man who assaulted me on the street and broke my left ulna, which I have doctor evidence for, because I wouldn't give him any of my medication, which is medical cannabis, and then I refused to sell him $5 worth as well. Then he hit my arm before walking away, basically, and I jumped up and ran away as quickly as two. So the thing is I saw him and I called the police because Donnell told me to. He's the assistant director there. He all of a sudden was nowhere to be found and the lights were off in the office. So as the tall, beautiful security officer, who I've only seen once before, she's not quite as tattooed up or unusually eyed, meaning her eyeballs look at you unusual. It's mostly females there. Blackout security, they're called. She's beautiful. Guess what, though? I'd only seen her once before. Then she's there telling me I wasn't supposed to let them in. The other officer, she came from the gate where she told them they weren't allowed to come in that way when I told them to come in the other way. She came videotaping from the other side. Then she comes through the inside to the hallway and to the front door saying he let them in on the camera. He wasn't supposed to let them in. And so I don't understand this, but now I do. The police tell me to go back to my laundry. As I walk away, I think to myself, they'll get him. He assaulted me the other day, broke my ulna. Instead, when the police left later, They said a detective would return with a warrant to arrest the man. No detective ever did arrive, ever, and the man still lives there. He still eyeballs me weird and tries to stare at me funny. I finished my laundry that night.
As I think from an intense lens or viewpoint or stance or devil's advocate, I look at the worst often, and I think this is what happened. Donnell and the police and the security officers set me up to look like I set that tall security officer up. As they walked up the stairs, this was the order they went up in. The short thug neighbor who still lives there, the older gray balding male police officer, the young, new, clean-shaved, fade haircut male beat officer. After the convict motherfucker and the elder police and the younger police, the tall, beautiful officer who I've never seen before, and then the one videotaping following up behind them as I went back to my laundry. I hate to think what that female, short, masculine security officer videotaped that always wears a wig, sometimes different ones. When she went upstairs with those men, then when I saw that security officer, the tall, beautiful one, only one other time when her long, beautiful black hair had been dyed red like clown candy apple.
Traffic light red. And I haven't seen her since. Like I said, that was over 6 months ago. I fear the worst, and I think those men had that woman sexually in some way on camera with the other officer videotaping. I start to look around at what I'm observing when I go to the Social Security office, when I go to the DMV office to get my IDs fixed, when I go to the post office and it's difficult to even change my address. I'm wondering why I see children getting identifications with older-looking, stranger-looking types as their chaperones, so to seem, at the DMV, or similar situations with people there at Social Security offices. And when I think about what I know about the world growing up here in Washington, D.C., as a little money goes a long way, and if you have fake identifications with international passage, such as passports and diplomatic affiliations or so-called family members, you're jumping border to border, nation to nation, country to country, airplanes, private jets, public planes, boats, yachts, and everything in between, like ships, or just plain driving and luxury, and wondering how anyone might really think this is possible. But let's just say you're just shuffling people around with identifications, changing the pictures, and having the documents made officially in the official city of slavery worldwide. Sure, we took it off of the papers in 1865, the Emancipation Proclamation. You know what they did next, though? They gave a bunch of folks 30 acres and a mule, 40 acres and a mule, I forget. I'm sorry to be so rude, but all they did was cut off the agricultural water until those farms were starved of water. And those same people had to sell their farms back and their mule back, and then eat corn and give them everything they had until they were indentured servants, owing all the money to the same slave system that had just given them what were supposed to be reparations after emancipation in the Civil War. So nowadays, it's done much differently and much more in your face sometimes. You can see signs around you. You can see classes of people around you here in Washington, D.C. You can see certain people that will not make eye contact with you. And you will see other certain people who will make very, very aggressive eye contact with you if you're trying to make eye contact with the people who won't make eye contact with you. Then you get into the identifications, children disappearing all over this nation, people needing servants and slaves all over the world, using language barriers and skin tones to basically separate people. Then you use language cues with local colloquialisms, whether it's regional within a nation or language to language. Do you understand what I'm saying? Certain hand signals and words, if you say them the wrong way or a different way, will get you caught up. In Washington, D.C., they put people in rooms in the dark or in the light, or in containers in the dark or in the light. They do it to children and adults. They tell young women, it's okay, we can do the abortion later so it's not as painful for you, or it's safer, and it'll be safe. We'll still say it was only a 3-month abortion, and they're not selling the baby parts, they're raising the children and selling them. And if you don't know what training human beings is about, why don't you ask the people who got the first documents when they got to all the German camps that were in World War II, where they were doing experiments, scientific experiments, scientific research on human beings en masse, using multiple tactics: psychiatric, psychological, workforce, starvation, mutilation, and human actual sewing bodies together combinations, as well as testing human resilience against the elements such as heat and cold. Now, today, you can have a young teenage woman or guy or girl or young child, I'm saying children because they are, if they didn't disappear as children or babies, and they might not be disappearing in a car. These teenage children think it's glitzy and glammy to go travel the world and maybe hook up with a dude here and there, and that's the plan. And then right when they get on that plane, whatever, they got to get new documents. When they leave the country, they leave under a different name. Is it some funny name like Kris Kringle? Or is it actually someone else's documents who's actually maybe 25 years old, who just went to jail or prison? The child flies out of the country as an adult under someone's documents who just went to jail or prison with official passports, U.S. identifications, and all the documents. The person in jail comes out as a security guard, maybe at a homeless shelter, maybe at the DMV, or maybe at the Social Security office as security, maybe armed security, maybe not. Then they get put back into the prison or the jail and told what to do and programmed in the dark room or the light room until they learn to program others. Eventually that child will come back to the United States. They'll just have a different identification when they re-enter the United States of America. And they might have a whole new profession that they like to share with other people. I don't know. It's probably not free. Or maybe they become sort of a tool for the industrial nations.
I'm not sure exactly what all the details are, but I see all these pieces of it here in Washington, D.C. And I know that when you sleep outside, people are en route every night throughout the streets. When I lived in Tampa, on the streets outside. When I was sleeping on the sidewalk here in Washington, D.C., until I figured out how to get into a shelter, and then eventually get into my tent, and then eventually figure out other things. But people go person to person saying, what you need. Well, here's what I need. I don't need anything except for my medical cannabis, some counseling is maybe like weekly basis, and art supplies, and a place to live, and food to eat, so I can recover from things I suffered just the past 1.5 years and 2.5 years. And there's a couple other things I want to tell you. Paging Captain Stupid. Paging Captain Stupid.
How dare you call me that?